And joining us now to tell us more about his condition is Attorney Ferdinand Topacio, legal counsel of former Congressman Arnie Teves. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Yes, good morning, Ms. Gretchen. It's always a pleasure to be here.
We're not on a couch anymore. It's a big story, no? Sa round table na to. Okay, let's talk about the condition of Congressman Arnie Teves. How is he now after his surgery? What happened there?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, as a layman, he suffered severe stomach pains 2 days ago at around 7 p.m. Unfortunately, it took the authorities at the BJMP until morning of the next day to bring him to the nearest hospital, the diagnosis was that he needed immediate surgery to save his life. But unfortunately, the first hospital he was brought to did not have the necessary facilities. So we had to wait until he was transferred to the Philippine General Hospital, which is obviously a much bigger and better equipped hospital.
You were complaining of delays.
Yes.
What does this tell us about the state of the healthcare system inside our penitentiary?
Well, it does not paint a good picture because, I said it's not only for Congressman Teves, but for all the other inmates, that if it takes this long, and to think that Congressman Teves is a high-profile, high-risk inmate, if it took that long for him to be given medical attention...
Which is several hours, right?
More than several hours. In fact, if you compute it, it was almost 24 hours from the time of the onset of the pain until he was given adequate medical attention by way of an operation.
Because it needs to be put in court.
Actually, with respect to emergency cases, the warden is fully vested with authority to make decisions with respect to medical attention as long as the destination of the inmate is a government hospital, which is true in this case.
Pero there are allegations from, specifically from the other side, opposing side, Pamplona Mayor Janice Degamo. She's saying that these are delaying tactics, judicial games, and drama. And you know how much this has happened in our political scene, in our judicial scene, where those who are arrested suddenly come up with some kind of sickness. Biglang lalabas na may ganito, may ganyan, yung pala, alam mo na.
Well, obviously, when you look at what has transpired, I think Congressman-elect Janice Degamo now has an egg on her face because you cannot fake that. You cannot fake appendicitis, you cannot fake an appendectomy, and it is beyond doubt that he underwent an operation which, in order to treat a life-threatening illness. So that's the problem when you speak without thinking or knowing the facts. You come up with logorrhea.
Pero kayo po ay nakapagbisita sa kanya dito sa PGH?
I was with him all the way from the time that I was summoned the next day because the pains started on the 16th. I was summoned early morning of the 17th, and I demanded that he be taken to a hospital because at that time he had been suffering for more than almost 12 hours, from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. And he has not yet been taken to any hospital. He was just being attended to by the in-house nurse. So I demanded that he be taken to a hospital, which was done. But then he had to stay in that hospital as while there was a back and forth communication between prison authorities as to what to do with him, until finally, when it was becoming obvious that the ailment, that the condition was potentially fatal, then the decision was made to transfer him to PGH.
Okay. And he was moved from the NBI facility in Muntinlupa to the Camp Bagong Diwa. Is that where he will stay for the duration of his trial? I mean, your plea to keep him in the NBI facility was rejected, right, by the Manila Regional Trial Court.
Yes, that is still under question for certain matters because it is our contention that what Branch 51 did was in contravention of the directive of no less than the Supreme Court. That the first, in cases of multiple cases in several courts, the first court that issues the commitment order should prevail. And in this case, it was not Branch 51 that issued the commitment order, but Branch 12. And Branch 12 was not yet implementing its decision because we had a pending motion for reconsideration with Branch 12. So we are at a loss as to why Branch 51 intervened in this case. But that's another matter for another episode.
I know. And speaking of, marami kasing kaso na hinaharap itong si Congressman Arnie Teves. Taking a look at it, no, parang meron po siyang 10 counts of murder, 13 counts of frustrated murder, 4 counts of attempted murder in Branch 51. And then meron din po yung, syempre, if we clump it all together, it is not just about the alleged murder of Roel Degamo back in 2023, but also happenings in Negros Oriental in 2019. Will all of that come together in one court, in one trial, one hearing? How does that work? And ano pong uunahin po ninyo?
Well, they're filed before different courts. There are cases before Branch 12, Branch 15, and Branch 51 of the Regional Trial Court of Manila. Plus, there are 2 other cases before the Regional Trial Courts of Quezon City. But all of these cases were separately filed. There is one case, the allegations with respect to a 2019 set of murders that had already been previously dismissed by the DOJ but refiled, wherein we are moving for consolidation to make the trial faster. So what I mean to say is, of all people, it is the congressman who wants to have these trials expedited because we are convinced of his innocence. So all
which
this,
comes across as ironic for some or for many because he escaped the Philippine justice system for about 2 years by going to Timor-Leste, and he comes back and wants a speedy trial.
He sought asylum because he believed, and rightly so, that he was being politically persecuted and that he could not attain justice, at least with respect to the executive branch. But now that he's back, and as the records of the previous trials will show, there is a paucity or dearth of evidence against him now that he is under custody of Philippine authorities. He is now invoking his right to a speedy trial, which is not ironic considering that it is the other camp who has been hurling allegations against us for trying to delay. We have never tried to delay the case. In fact, in Branch 51, we insisted that there be pre-trial immediately. And then when the judge said that it was not possible, we asked for 10 days. But it was the lawyer of Janice Degamo who asked for 30 days when we were ready right there and then. And then when the judge said that it had to be deferred, we only asked for 10 days. They asked for 30 days.
Okay, and you will have to answer to all of this in our courts. But the appeal on your side is to have all of these consolidated.
Not really. There are rules with respect to consolidation that cannot apply to all of them. Some of them may be consolidated, but the others will have to go on separately.
Okay, and to hear all of that, no, how long will it take, you think?
Only heaven knows, actually, in this country. It could be a year, it could be 10 years.
So Congressman Arnie will be staying at the Camp Bagong Diwa facility for a good time.
Yes, it doesn't matter.
Given all of these cases.
It doesn't matter whether he stays there for a long time. It's just that we have a move to have him transferred back to Building 14 for certain reasons.
Okay. I want to go to Timor-Leste, which I think is very interesting. His arrest and deportation drew a lot of attention to international legal protocols. Do you think there were irregularities there, or was it right on the book what happened, the deportation of the former congressman?
Definitely, and this is not my opinion alone, but in fact, I have news to the effect that the Parliament of Timor-Leste is now investigating as to why Mr. Teves was repatriated forcefully via a collusion with the Timor-Leste Executive Department and the government of the Philippines when there is a final and executory court ruling from the highest court of Timor-Leste, the Tribunal de Recursos, prohibiting the extradition of Mr. Teves. They say that And there is a provision in the Constitution of Timor-Leste that, as I was made aware of, which prohibits any orders contrary to a final and executory decision of the courts in Timor-Leste. So it has become quite a matter of great controversy, not only in Timor-Leste, but as you've said, in international legal circles, especially human rights groups.
Actually, kung titignan mo, parang they have also previously ruled on this in favor of extradition. There were 2 rulings favoring extradition, and the third one was taking that back. No? And Justice Remulla was quoted to have said that they have a very young judicial system. It is not yet mature, and they are figuring things out along the way. So could it have been, a legal prerogative by the Timor-Leste government to think of the former congressman as a national security threat, and to have deported him, and that was legal, within their legal means to do so?
First of all, it is unseemly for a government official of our country to be making criticisms of the legal system of another country, especially a country with which we have diplomatic relations. That's uncalled for and very undiplomatic. But of course, that's Boying Remulla. What do we expect? Anyway, with respect to that, of course, the executive department of Timor-Leste has every right to think that there is a security risk. However, that opinion cannot prevail over a final and executory judgment of its own courts. It's not even the court of the Philippines or any other court. Because if they contravene the mandate of their own courts, that destroys or severely dilutes the separation of powers. That is also applicable with respect to the Timor-Leste Constitution.
But he also had no papers. He had no visa. He had a canceled passport. So technically, wala po siyang papeles. Undocumented alien po siya dun.
Nonetheless,
was his asylum granted?
Well, nonetheless, his asylum is under process. But there is a principle in law applicable everywhere because this is based on Roman law. Therefore, it is of universal application that you cannot do indirectly what the law does not allow you to do directly. And what the Court of Timor-Leste has prohibited is the repatriation or extradition of Mr. Teves. By deporting him, in effect, he has been extradited to
But
the
wasn't that
Philippines.
also the decision of the Timor-Leste government? In effect, it was a rejection of that asylum application.
Nonetheless, there is still a court order. There is a process by which you reject an asylum application, and that is by informing you that it has been rejected, because that rejection may still be subject to appeal again to the courts. That's why there is a judicial system. It operates as a check on the actions of the executive. The principles, the bedrock principles of the Timor-Leste Court, of the Timor-Leste Constitution is basically the same as ours, although it is parliamentary.
Kahit hindi po siya citizen ng Timor-Leste?
Yes, because the laws of a country apply not only to the citizens of that country, but to all those
So
who
what could
sojourn.
how could this have happened legally? If he was deemed as a security threat by the government there, paano po dapat tumakbo yun?
Well, there are other ways by which that a supposed security threat may be neutralized. He may be placed under house arrest. He may be put under surveillance legally by the security forces of Timor-Leste. But definitely, he should not have been deported because that is tantamount to an extradition which was prescribed by a final and executory order of the Timor-Leste Court.
Sabi niyo nga po na bigyan kayo ng writ of habeas corpus. Pero this has been debunked by both the NBI and the DOJ that there was no court order granted. Can you...
There is. In fact, I have a copy of the writ of habeas corpus. Unfortunately, of course, there is no way by which a court, any court, even in this country, may enforce its judgment if the executive refuses to enforce it. Case in point, the temporary restraining order against Secretary de Lima, which allowed former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo to leave. A TRO against the whole departure order of de Lima. And we all know what happened there. We were already at the airport. I was there, personally. And the executive department did not honor the temporary restraining order of the Supreme Court. They did not allow my client, Mrs. Arroyo, to leave. That is one example wherein if the executive department refuses to implement a court order, there is very little that the courts can do. However, it erodes the powers of the judiciary and the separation of powers. And
Kumbaga, hindi sinunod.
Hindi sinunod. Binraso lang. The writ of habeas corpus, they can fact check me on this. I have the documents. I'm very confident of what I'm saying. My name is not Boying Remulla. I do not speak if I'm not sure of the facts. But it was ignored by the executive department. He was still under detention in the Interior Ministry compound when the writ of habeas corpus was issued. Unfortunately, it wasn't honored.
Okay, I want to get your mind on the asylum application of former spokesperson Harry Roque. Sabi rin ni Justice Secretary Remulla na hindi ito na-grant ng Dutch courts, to which Harry Roque responded, fake news. Ano po ba yung proseso doon? Kasi on our end, we haven't gotten clarity over it. And given the sensitive nature of asylum seekers, it's probably only Attorney Roque who knows. Am I correct? And paano po yun na siya po ay may arrest warrant na dito sa Pilipinas?
Well, I would suppose na kaya siya nag-apply ng asylum is, again, he is pleading political persecution. Each country has its own process for granting asylum. But the general principles are always the same anywhere. A person goes to a country, he seeks political asylum, he applies, and the executive department either grants or rejects it. Of course, an asylum application is it's quite a heavy burden because by applying for asylum, you're basically saying that your country is persecuting you. That's why you want the protection of another country. So those are the principles. But with respect to Attorney Roque, I am not cognizant of the actual facts. Again, if I make an opinion there, I would be doing a Boeing.
Pero kung para sa inyo, dapat po ba siyang umuwi at sagutin na lamang yung charges against him? Because if you flee, the more guilty you look.
Actually, that principle is not a hard and fast rule. That is why there is the principle of asylum. There are exceptions to that. And actually, one of the exceptions was exercised by, if you recall, Senator Panfilo Lacson, who had a warrant of arrest also for the Ser Corbito murder case.
Pero
double
umalis
murder
siya.
case. He fled. And then later on, he was exonerated. So there are so many exceptions to that rule. It's not a hard and fast rule. Actually, it's when it comes to legal principles, it's not a fixed legal principle.
But it seems the government is going the same way as they did with former Congressman Arnie Teves, na inantay na lang nila mapaso itong makancel yung passport, mapaso yung visa para habulin na lamang nung authorities. Let's see though if what the Dutch courts do decide on this.
Okay, well, well, of course, it is well within the rights of the executive department of our country to do that. But what my take on this is that if a self-confessed terrorist such as Joe Masison was granted asylum in the Netherlands, why would they not grant Harry Roque the same courtesy when it is very obvious that what he is undergoing is simply political persecution due to his loyalty to the former president, Rodrigo Duterte?
Well, it actually comes in a bad time, that asylum application, because of the change in leadership over in the Netherlands. They have become more conservative, less open and welcoming to asylum seekers. So I think he's going to have a very tight opening there.
Well, good luck to him.
All right, thank you so much for weighing in on with us and updating us on the condition of Congressman Arnie Teves. We have Attorney Ferdinand Topacio joining us on Morning Matters today.